Kulu. Now, it was the last stronghold of any significant resistance against the Taliban in Afghanistan. But now the Panjshir Valley, 100 or so kilometers north of Kabul, has apparently fallen to the radical Islamist fighters too. That, at least, is what they say. The Taliban spokesman, Zabihullah Mujahid, says that they are in full control of the province after days of heavy fighting, and that local leaders and religious elders have been coordinating with them. The Taliban also posted a video allegedly showing their fighters raising the black and white flag of what they call the Islamic emirate outside the provincial governor's residence. But for their part, the resistance denies that the Taliban have taken control over the Panjshir Valley, which has been a traditional stronghold of anti-Taliban sentiment.
They repeatedly gave a negative answer to our delegations and ended the negotiations. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan was forced to send troops. Our nation no longer wants the war to continue, and there is no reason for the war to continue. Therefore, it is necessary for all our compatriots to know that the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan has ended the war. God forbid. We cannot imagine that we don't like the common people of Panjshir, the Mujahideen, and the inhabitants of the glorious valley of Panjshir.
A spokesman for the Taliban there. Well, the Middle East analyst, Dr. Saul Zadka, has been closely monitoring the situation in Afghanistan, and he joins me now for more. Great to see you, Dr. Zadka. So contested claims by both sides, but now the Taliban say they've taken over. Do those claims ring true?
Well, normally in such situation, we would say that the truth is somewhere in the middle. But unfortunately for the resistance front, it's not going to be the case, because they themselves admit the fact that the Taliban managed to capture the central of Panjshir Valley. And in fact, the leader of the resistance, Ahmed Massoud, the son of the legendary Ahmed Shah Massoud, we will talk about him later, he is the one who claimed and admitted that he lost a few fighters, some of them his relatives. One is a general, and also in yesterday's fierce fighting, his spokesman as well as his top advisor was killed as well, which brings us to the conclusion that it may be that the truth this time is on the side of the Taliban.
Yes, that's a very interesting point. I'm wondering, though, Dr. Zadka, why the valley is so significant.
It is significant not only because of its territory, 90 miles north of Kabul, but because it gained a mythical, heroic reputation throughout the years. This valley has never fallen to foreign forces at all. When the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 1979, this particular province was the only one that was not captured. And the man who was responsible for this heroic fighting against the invading Soviet forces was the father of the current leader who is staging this resistance as we speak against the Taliban. He was Ahmed Shah Massoud, the so-called the lion of the valley, the lion of Panjshir, who was murdered only 2 days before 9/11, meaning 20 years and 3 days ago. Normally, this particular day, the 9th of September, is commemorated as the Massoud Day. And of course, all over Afghanistan, people will talk about him in the next few days. But we should remember that his son is the one who is alongside the former vice president of Afghanistan, Amurallah Salah, the deputy of the former president, Ashraf Ghani, who fled to Abu Dhabi. He is the one who is still fighting alongside Shah Massoud Jr. in order to come to some kind of arrangement with the Taliban. They are not talking about having the upper hand militarily. They are seeking negotiation. There was a negotiation already, but it failed several times. So now the situation is very, very simple. The fighters of the resistance front are going up to the mountains. Taliban gradually is taking the central of this province, and it looks as if within a few days the conquest of Afghanistan by the Taliban would be complete.
Dr. Zadka, you mentioned Mr. Massoud there. I mean, he's been criticizing the international community for, in his words, legitimizing the Taliban and also calling for a national uprising. I mean, how likely is that? Because on the face of it, it sounds like a futile gesture.
Unfortunately, yes. He felt abandoned by the West, and he is the product of a Western culture. He went to two universities in London. One of them was where I myself postgraduated. He went to a military school in England. He is the product of the British education system. He is very, very versatile in English. He is very known to have been communicated with Western leaders. He met the president of France only a few months ago. His father is widely admired outside Afghanistan as well. But I think that he reached a situation of being quite desperate. He is asking every Afghan to rally behind him, while most of the country, 33 provinces, are already overrun by the Taliban.
And I wonder if you've heard allegations that Panjshir fell with the express help of neighboring Pakistan. I mean, if so, what do you make of that?
Well, I'm not so sure about that. What is interesting is that Ahmed Massoud, he is blaming the ISI, the notorious Pakistani secret service, of meddling in the fighting. And he also said only yesterday that about a thousand people were captured. Some of them were killed during the fighting, and many of them are mercenaries from Pakistan. It seems to me that Ahmed Massoud reached a situation of no return. And if the Taliban will manage to kill him, this would inflict a terrible blow, not only on the family, but also on all the pro-Western allies in Afghanistan. This will be quite too much to take after his father was murdered by Al-Qaeda 20 years ago.
And I mean, looking at the situation in the Panjshir Valley now going forward, how strong is the spirit of resistance there? I suppose I could say, perhaps more importantly, how does the resistance compare with the Taliban in terms of, men and firepower? Do you expect that resistance to continue as a sort of guerrilla movement going forward?
Ahmed Shah Massoud, the father of the current leader, was a brilliant guerrilla leader. He could not pass all these qualities to his son, who was very young when he was murdered. He himself was compared to Che Guevara or Ho Chi Minh as a very talented guerrilla leader. I don't think his son, who spent most of his life in the West, has this kind of qualities. He is not necessarily a military leader. And also, yesterday, for example, I heard that his advisor, his name is Fahum Rushdie, was killed in the fighting. And he is the one who stood next to his father 20 years ago when two journalists, who were actually suicide bombers, blew themselves up. This guy, Fahum Rushdie, was injured at the time. And yesterday we were told that he was killed. This is definitely a blow to the morale of those people who are resisting the Taliban in this stronghold. But they are still very highly motivated. And they are interested in negotiation, of course. The Taliban, on their part,
we gotta go.
Oh, you are our brothers. They blame the resistant front.
Dr. Saul Zadka, the Middle East analyst, I apologize for interrupting you, but I've got to go.